Hello, my name is Alex Zablocki. I'm a resident of Great Hills, Staten Island. I'm a student at Baruch College. On the morning of September 11th, I left home at 6:04 to get the Great Hills train to the Staten Island ferry, which would bring me to Baruch for my 7:35 law class. Law class went fine. It ended around 8:30, 8:40. I proceeded to go to a Dwayne Reed store on 23rd and Lexington Avenue. I bought candy corn and a power drink, and as I was online, I overheard on the radio that there was a fire at the World Trade Center. I didn't think much of it at the time, thinking it was just a regular thing, fire or something, small thing. So I headed to my other class, which was across the street, and people started coming in and mentioning that they were hearing on their Walkmans and on their radios that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. And then they heard about the Pentagon crash and then the other crash into the other tower of the World Trade Center. And I decided that it would be best for me to probably go home, probably try to get to the Staten Island ferry and make my way home. So what I did was I left my class and I walked to Park Avenue South and 23rd. I proceeded down Park Avenue South. I went to Union Square, which is 14th and Broadway, when I was about to get on trains, but unfortunately, everyone started coming out of the train system. When I asked someone, they said that the MTA had stopped running trains below, I guess, 34th Street. So I knew I had to walk at that point. And as I started walking down Broadway, I could see all the smoke and stuff and all the chaos. Everyone was walking towards me as I was walking down towards the ferry. And someone had mentioned that one of the towers had collapsed. And I didn't believe it at first. I don't think anyone did. And then, of course, I saw in the distance all this smoke billowing down across Broadway towards, I guess, the water side, the East River side. So when I got to where the streets on Broadway, where the numbers become names, I stopped into a Tower Records and I bought a camera. And I went outside the Tower Records and I was coming out. The other tower, I guess, was coming down, the second tower to collapse. So I started taking pictures, and it really depicted the moment in history, the chaos of everyone walking towards me and the smoke going across Broadway. And I proceeded to walk down, thinking that I could get to the ferry. And when I got around, I would say around 4 blocks from the Woolworths building, I had to make a left because the cops had that part sectioned off. And the crowd of people wound up getting caught almost in a triangle near the Manhattan District County Courthouse, the telephone building, Pace University, and City Hall. And we found that we had to actually move back towards Uptown. However, I stopped in a place called the New York Rescue Mission, which allowed me and many other Pace University students that happened to be in the area, and Staten Islanders who were getting off the ferry that I met there also. We got to stay at the New York City Rescue Mission, make phone calls if we had to, get water, whatever we had to do, use the bathroom. And about an hour or two later, I decided that it was time to leave. They had the TV on there. I saw everything that was going on. I got briefed on everything that was happening, since basically most of us were clueless on to what was going on. And we headed down towards the water. They started evacuating that area because the police thought there were car bombs, I guess, or that's what was reported. And as we headed towards the water, we wanted to still get to the ferry, me and this other Staten Islander that I was with, and we saw this guy running towards the water. He was a New York Post editor. He said he had just come off the Gowanus, and he was down at the ferry, he'd come back up, he was taking pictures, and he was running, and we asked him, well, how do we get to the Staten Island ferry, since the cops had told us it wasn't running. And he said, well, follow me, and we followed him, got down to the water, South Street, and just walked, took a right. There were no cops or anything, anyone blocking off. There were crowds of people walking. We walked underneath the FDR all the way to the Staten Island ferry, and as we walked past the areas like Wall Street and stuff, I remember seeing the thick smoke that we were in, and people were at the ferries that were going to, I guess, New Jersey, off the South Street Seaport, and they were screaming, ferries this way, ferries this way. It was almost a scene out of the Titanic movie. It was really unbelievable, like when they have the flares on the boats and they're saying, like, is anyone out here? And we walked through and we saw the rubble, and I saw stuff from Cantor Fitzgerald, stuff from Morgan Stanley, stuff from the World Trade Center. I saw stuff from Cantor Fitzgerald. It really put the whole scene in perspective, that this wasn't just buildings collapsing, that it was people that had actually died here. And I remember seeing a lady's picture, I guess it was on her desk, of a red-haired lady holding her baby with all the Cantor Fitzgerald papers that were around. As we passed past Wall Street, I eventually got to the ferry, and they were handing out the smoke masks since it was very smoky down there, and I guess I got on the 1:30 ferry, the Andrew J. Barbieri, went to the top level and just stood there and looked at Manhattan with the big billow of smoke over it. It was really just unbelievable. And the bottom level of the ferry had a whole bunch of injured firefighters on it, injured paramedic workers, civilians that were injured, and everything else, people with bloody noses and their hair just covered with stuff, and they weren't even recognizable. A lot of people were crying on the ferry. A lot of people were crying downtown at that point. I remember when I passed the Manhattan District County Courthouse, which is directly across from City Hall, which is 2 blocks near the World Trade Center. I remember seeing people running and some people just slowly walking out of the smoke, totally covered. I couldn't believe it. And there was this one guy, there's a cafe with green seats and stuff in front of the Manhattan District County Courthouse. And I guess there were EMT workers there, and they set up a triage. And I remember this guy clearly was laying back in a chair, and this lady, this paramedic worker, was crying, holding him as he was like coughing, and he couldn't get any air. And I don't know if he was dying or not. The whole day was put in perspective by actually going down there. Totally different from what you see on television, I guess. When I got to the Staten Island side, I took the Staten Island Railroad back to Great Kills. I was back again, and I walked home from the train station, and you could actually see the smoke from Great Kills, which was kind of amazing. You could see it over the houses and stuff. And when I got home, I just sat there and I cried. I couldn't believe it. This stuff that I heard and the stuff that I saw from the people and everything that were down there, telling me that people were jumping out of buildings, and as they were walking past from World Trade Center 7, the 2 Staten Islanders I was walking with, they said that people were jumping like all around them, and it was just disgusting. And eventually, my uncle who works in the World Financial Center, I found out that he was okay. My dad was in Reno, Nevada on a business trip. He was coming home that morning on a plane, and I found out that he was okay. My grandma was okay, my sister was okay, all my family members were okay, and my mom, who works in Pier 16 near the Staten Island Ferry on the Staten Island side, she was okay, and she came home shortly after I got home. And that was about it, and the first night was difficult. Just thinking about all the workers and stuff and all the people, and how many times I might have gone on the ferry with them or taken the bus with them or something like that, or the train, and that these were the same people that I went with every day, that we lost so many Staten Islanders. And the next day I decided that I couldn't get so depressed over this, that I had to be strong about it. And what I did was, I'm an Eagle Scout from Troop 115 Great Kills, and I called up some people. First, a person named Justin Feldman, whose dad was a Port Authority worker at the World Trade Center, and he happened to be fine. And I called him and said, do you want to go out and raise some money? They needed money, they needed supplies. So he said, sure, I'll be down in 10 minutes. I said, okay. I called up some other people. We got a whole bunch of people, about a half a dozen to-be Eagle Scouts, former Eagle Scouts, Boy Scouts, and we headed to first Wallbaum's in Greenridge. And we collected some money there for the Red Cross. And then we proceeded for the next 3 days to collect money at Kmart and supplies. We wound up getting eventually 4 van loads of supplies, which were trucked down to the Staten Island ballpark, and about $5,000 for the American Red Cross. And I felt that that was the least we could do. And me and my friend, eventually, after we had collected everything and we felt that this is what we can do as Americans trying to help out the effort, we went to the Staten Island ballpark late at night for 2 nights in a row, and we helped out basically just organizing the waters or organizing all the food packages or the first aid packages, all the stuff that was coming in. We would organize it all, and then what would happen is a small cart would come to the Staten Island ballpark, the back entrance. They would load up one of these small golf carts. They would truck it over the Staten Island ferry. All the fire departments and the paramedics that were staying, I believe, in the old Stapleton Home Port Center, they would all get on the ferry, and they would all be ferried over to Manhattan. All the supplies would be dropped off and go on, and this would happen all night long. People would bring stuff all night long. All Staten Islanders would bring tons of stuff, and we would send out tons of stuff, and it was just real. You saw so much bad, but you saw so much good. There was a great sense of humanity after September 11th. You really saw what America was about that. Even though the building is collapsing, you lost so many people, and at that point, so many people were missing, that people didn't just give up and throw in the towel and say, what are we going to do? Instead, they picked up themselves and they said, this is what we're going to do. And I think that's the most important thing about September 11th, is that the terrorists tried to take something away from us, our Americanness, our humanity, how we're always there for our neighbors, for our fellow Staten Islanders or people in New York City or Washington or Pennsylvania. And you always know that any disaster, since 1776, Americans have always been there for every other American and any other country in distress, from terrorist or Nazi regimes or now the Taliban regime. And I have one thing. I found this on South and Wall Street on September 11th. It's a unfilled can of fish oil trade sheet. And I hold this very near and dear to my heart, and I hope it will be in a museum one day. As you can see, the trade sheet has burnt edges. And what I think this symbolizes is, since it's from Cantor Fitzgerald lost so many workers at the World Trade Center. But like all other Americans, they picked themselves up, and though they were so depressed and so distraught and just totally, totally damaged, they picked themselves up, and now the company is prospering again. That this didn't destroy them after losing so much, almost the whole bond trading unit. And I think this trade sheet, since it has burnt edges, it symbolizes the strength of New York and the strength of America, that we were scarred, our skyline has changed, our people have changed, stuff has changed, downtown has changed, school for me has changed, the commute has changed, everything has changed. However, we may be scarred, we may have burnt edges, but we were not destroyed. And this trade sheet survived the impact of planes, it survived the destruction of a trade center, and yet it was found by me walking down South Street to the Staten Island Ferry on the morning of September 11th. And it should be remembered that something like this has great symbolism, that yes, it was burnt, yes, it has burnt edges, and you could clearly see it was scarred, but it was not destroyed. And I find that very important to think 5 or 10 years down of what September 11th will mean to the world, to future generations, is that when terrorists tried to destroy us, tried to take us down, that we really got right back up out of the rubble. We brushed ourselves off. Thousands of people helped out to find other Americans. Thousands of people helped out to get supplies to those people and money to the victims that might have been affected. And everyone just came together. America brought together the world that day. It wasn't terrorists destroying anybody. In fact, terrorists brought everyone together. And that event symbolizes that to me, that it wasn't terrorists destroying or trying to destroy a city or destroy a nation or destroy humanity. It was actually the destruction created this bond between Americans, between people, just seeing the American flags on all the streets and how they were sold out. It was a real renewal of hope that there is a lot of bad in the world, but good greatly outweighs it. And we just need to stay strong because of that. And today I'm fine. I still visit Ground Zero often. After 9/11, I went back to school about 2 weeks after. I believe after the Jewish holidays, school would have been closed anyway for a while, but it was closed for a while. And when I went back, it was much different. There was a stench in the air, almost like if you were to burn a plastic cup or any kind of plastic. It was a stench in the air for about 3 or 4 months, as far as I can remember. It was in the subway systems. It was horrible. At some points in the morning, I would feel, why am I doing this? I would feel very, very nauseous. The smell would get me so disgusted. Passing Fulton Street or the Brooklyn Bridge Station City Hall, it would be the most disgusting, reeking smell in the world. It's not even explainable. However, I knew I wanted to do this. I wanted to be resilient. I wanted to get beyond this, that this was the most devastating point in my life. However, I was going to push forward and move on. I always used to spend many of my hours when I used to have huge gaps at Baruch College, especially the first year. Now I'm a junior at Baruch. But my first year, my freshman year, my sophomore year, I would spend my gaps where I had 4 hours in between classes. I would head down to the World Trade Center site and I'd go to Borders Books and I'd read financial books. The last book I had read there was Messages of the Market by Ron and Sana, and Maestro, the biography of Alan Greenspan. And I met a lot of great people at the Borders bookstore, and when you sit in the cafe and get to read a book, you overlook the street, and everyone looked like little ants walking around. It was a city in itself, and the World Trade Center taught you community, and it taught you what it was all about. And one thing that's the most important is that you hold community. And that if you keep community, something like the World Trade Center, where you have your bookstore, and you have your businesses, and you have your nonprofit places, and you have your banks, and your parks, and your waterfront and everything, and it's like a little community in itself, like Battery Park City is a little community within itself. Staten Island is a community within itself. Community is the most important. I think it was because of community that so many people after September 11th rose up and said, we could beat this. Like I said, I still pass Ground Zero today. I go there now, not almost every day like I used to. Before the summer, I would go there maybe twice a week. After September 11th, I'd be there about every day. I weaned off a bit. I now go there only about once a week, if even that. I look at the memorial, I see progress that they've made. I also made sure that I kept history within my mind. I took photos just about every single week. I have about 400 photos now of when I went back to school, as they were cleaning it, and it slowly, as the pile went down and as the facades were taken away, and as it was all rebuilt, I have pictures of all of that. And now I have pictures of the memorial that they just put up for the victims that were lost there, almost 3,000, with the plaque of the names and the pictures of the history of the World Trade Center and stuff. And that's about it. I think September 11th has changed all our lives. It's changed my life. It's created a total 360 of where I should head, or what should I do in the future. Is work more important than family? Is work more important than community? Is community really the essential of life? Is fellow friends and family the essential? Or should it be getting a job on Wall Street or something and making lots of money? You can do that, but if you don't have community, then what do you really have at the end? You have nothing. So that's what September 11th taught me. You need to have something. You need to give back. So now, I recently, on the anniversary of 9/11, I gave something to the Captain Daniel Cruz of the Andrew J. Barbieri. I think he was one of the forgotten heroes that actually drove the ferry to Manhattan that day to pick up people out of the rubble, out of the smoke. I think he's a hero, and that's what I felt. I had to give back to the captain. I had to give back to the missionary recently. And I have to give back to the world. I was so fortunate not to have been down there that day for whatever reason, or not have been passing through there. If it was on a Wednesday, that would have been the time for me to pass there, because my classes on Wednesday started at a certain time, Baruch, that I would have been passing through there. Who knows if I would have hung right on Broadway instead of going down to the Brooklyn Bridge Station, if I would have gone to World Trade Center to check out a book or something I wanted to buy. You think about that. So you have to give back. And I recommend everyone to stay involved in their community and remember September 11th. Remember that these people did not die in vain, that this should teach us something, that work is not as important as family or community, and that you should really devote time to volunteering or community efforts or whatever. And I hope that they take the World Trade Center site into consideration to making it a full memorial, as Giuliani has said, with a library and a museum. I think that would be perfect. I think the library would signify community, the Borders books that I was used to, seeing all the people around, and I think the museum would signify the learning part of it, the educational part of it, and I think the memorial part of it would symbolize the mind part, the spiritual part maybe, of what we need to get on, and those three elements together is all you need. You do not need commercial or work in an area like that. It's just not necessary. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this.